Here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we are working on something revolutionary that will change the way we travel. Faster than a car and more convenient than a plane, this new transportation will change the way we get from city to city. The Hyperloop is essentially a high-speed train in a low-pressure tube. At 1,000 times less than atmospheric pressure, this new transportation method allows us to go much faster using far less energy. Comprised of over 75 student engineers, the Badgerloop team here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison has been working tirelessly to make this dream a reality. All of our sensors and controls are built into a distributed control area network. Our propulsion system uses the world's largest haulwalk wheels. We are developing virtual reality systems to augment the passenger experience. All of our sensor data will be live streamed to our virtual dashboard. Visit Badgerloop.com to show your support and keep up with all that we are doing. On Wisconsin.
Mouth made of metal, pocket full of yellow, pocket full of gold, and I hope you find your dream. Yeah. What did you say back to me? Dreaming of Maybach cruising, maybe talking crazy, but I want it. 100,000 ways to choose it. Who the hell is out and who's in trouble? Maybe I'm too subtle. Mouth made of metal, pocket full of yellow, pocket full of gold, and I hope you find your dream. And darling, never settle, chasing down the devil, chasing down the gods, and I hope you find your dream. Living like a silent movie, shut your mouth and see straight through me, finding that you're hiding in your money. I got a million ways to lose it, nothing in my life worth proving, chasing all my time.
Your program will begin in just a moment.
Metal, pocket full of yellow.
Elon Musk and SpaceX and Tesla, they're leading the way that so many of us have dreamed of. The students of today are inspired by SpaceX because they see a company that's creating the future. They see action and real progress, and they see opportunity for themselves to play a direct role in bringing about this future.
From the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
It's clear that the public and the world want something new, and I think you guys can bring it to them. So, congratulations.
Badgerloop was established with one goal: revolutionize transportation. Over the last year and a half, a team of 150 undergraduate students from engineering, physics, and business backgrounds came together to make our dreams a reality. It all started back at Design Weekend, where our design placed third among hundreds of teams from around the world. Then we began to build. Countless simulations, days and nights of fabrication, and words of advice and encouragement got us to where we are today. From here, we make history, as we provide the next steps in the rise of the Hyperloop. We've done it, and it's with great pride that we would like to introduce the Badgerloop Pod.
Competition 2 began a little bit differently. Constrained with a time limit of only 8 months, we started designing, fabricating, and testing an entirely new pod. Each system was carefully designed to ensure seamless integration, factoring in a new priority: speed. With this goal in sight, our team, a handful of scrappy undergraduates, dedicated countless hours designing and creating the pod. Providing an unparalleled learning experience, teammates from many different backgrounds came together to appreciate the many innovative facets of Hyperloop, engineering, and team operations. Our passion for this project brought us together, allowing us to push past our competitors. With this hard work and generous support from our sponsors, faculty, staff, and peers, our vision is becoming a reality. Now all that's left is the final run.
Badgerloop is more than a competition.
It's an opportunity.
It's a work hard, up all night grind.
We are teammates. We become friends.
We compete,
but build pods for fun.
This is our chance to show people what Badgers are made of.
This
This is our redemption.
Badgerloop is a student organization here at UW-Madison. Some might say that we're an engineering build team, and what we do is we build Hyperloop pods and we compete in the SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition. Recently we've been kind of framing ourselves as a STEM education group where we use building Hyperloop pods as a way to help people take the things they learn in the classroom and apply it to something a bit greater. So both for not just like engineering students, but people from all over campus.
Since last competition, we've been just preparing for the next competition. You know, a lot of work goes into just making sure we have a viable product.
You know, we're always kind of in the prototyping phase, and we're always building off our designs, especially from year to year. And that's actually something we're incorporating into our org this year. We want to make sure we're always improving on our past designs. So really, I think we want to just be taken seriously and seen as high quality engineers making a great product.
The goal for this competition, see, you could look at it a couple different ways. From kind of like the high level view, it's to like try and develop this new exciting idea in transportation and try and make people's lives better by bringing something to the table that like the current technology can't offer. The goal kind of for a lot of the people on the team is to become better engineers and to learn a lot along the way through the different like hiccups and various problems that we face along the way. So for us, it's really to grow as engineers and as people.
I think it's easy to lose focus because the scope is so big. As you're designing and as you're building, you don't really see like what it's gonna be, and same goes for operations too. Like, you know, we're putting all this work into something that doesn't necessarily physically exist yet.
You get like so invested in it, and it's something that's so important to like all of us that like the stakes get really high when the potential for failure is always so close. But that's something that always keeps you super motivated along the entire way. We all have a lot going on already. We're just trying to struggle along being college students anyway, and then you throw this massive time commitment on top of it. It's just so easy for this to just be like all-encompassing in your life.
I think of what makes Badgerloop special is that It's kind of this ragtag group of students, you know, people from not just engineering, but I think we have 4 different colleges that are represented on our team. So it's just like this very interesting group of people that come together, and everybody's very passionate about the project. So it's kind of inspiring in that aspect. And then just the ability to like get things done. There's a lot that we don't know, but I think it's incredible our ability to figure out things that we don't know.
I know I speak for everyone on the executive team and everyone else on the team when I say that I think every person that is here at Reveal, obviously, and is, you know, going to the competition works really hard and puts in the time that's really necessary for us to do this, and we really couldn't do it without everyone's effort.
If in July it does all come together and we make it in the tube, what would that mean?
That would be incredible. I mean, it would be, you know, I've thought about it in my head. I try to keep it out of my head, but just like, I get super excited and just like thinking about the possibility of that happening. Seeing something that I've put 2 years into it, but you know, there's many members on the team who've joined as soon as they got here and have spent their whole college career working on Badgerloop, and you know, the people I've met and all the time I've put in and work I've put in, the stress that it's caused me, like all of that would be paid off times 100. You know, it would, it just like seeing something that we've all worked on come together as a team and actually get to go and potentially over 100 miles an hour, that would be unreal.
After all that we've been through, still believe in magic. Well, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Of course I do.
Welcome everybody. Hi everyone, my name's Kevin and I'll be your host for today's event. I've been a member of Badgerloop for the past 4 years and I'm super excited to share what the team has been working on since the last Hyperloop competition almost 2 years ago. So, on behalf of the entire Badgerloop team, I would like to formally welcome you to the Pod 5 reveal event. Now, before we begin, I'd like to encourage everyone watching to submit questions for the upcoming question and answer period with our Badgerloop executive team. You can do so 3 different ways, either in the live stream chat, at the very bottom of the reveal webpage, or by tweeting using the hashtag BadgerloopPodReveal. So, without further ado, let's get the show on the road with some opening remarks from the Badgerloop executive team. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Nathan and I'm the president of Badgerloop. I'd like to start off with a brief synopsis of our unusual year as a student organization. Last fall, we began with the intent of designing a pod that would handle the foreseeable rules of the next competition. Despite not hearing word from SpaceX regarding the competition, we pushed forward with this plan to prepare for what we believed would be the most likely scenario for the next competition. We continued on this path until February, when the executive team reevaluated our high-level direction. We realized that the path we were on had strayed from our organization's mission and goals, and that we needed to rectify this. Our mission statement is to provide an unparalleled learning opportunity that fosters innovation and hands-on experience. What was missing from our mission and goals was a hands-on construction of the pod. We decided upon an ambitious goal to build a pod that would be ready for reveal by the end of the semester. We knew that the short timeline and COVID-19 restrictions that it would be difficult to accomplish, but nonetheless, we thought it was the best course of action. After discussing this with all the team leads to make sure everyone was on board, we went into a sprint to finish the pod. While this was an abrupt decision, we believed it would be necessary to return the operations of the organization to what it should be, not what we were doing at the time. There were many difficulties associated with building a pod this year, but the team made the necessary adjustments to finish a pod that we are all proud of. Building off of that, I would like to thank a few groups of people. Firstly, our sponsors. It is always a pleasure working with both new and returning sponsors and seeing the excitement and unique value each one brings to our organization. We realize this year has been difficult on people and businesses alike, and we value your support as much as ever. Badgerloop relies fully on sponsor donations to function as an organization, so I'd like to again say thank you for your contributions to making the student organization possible. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the family and friends that are here tonight, and those that couldn't make it. This organization can be quite demanding at times, and it is realized that this can cause stressful time with family and friends of members. So for those close to members of the organization, thank you for your understanding and support of those participating in something they love. Third, I would like to thank our members. This was an extremely difficult year to operate as a competition-based STEM education organization. I know that the year was riddled with change, uncertainty, and difficult times. However, you all still found the time and internal drive to continue developing a pod despite all the difficulties outside of Badgerloop. It is not unreasonable to think that this organization could have ceased to exist during the past year. Many odds were stacked against us, and yet despite this, you all stuck with the organization and persevered. I believe this speaks volumes to the dedication each and every one of you have for our organization. I truly believe we have a special group of students on the team, and when we work together for a common goal, many things are possible. With that, I would like to offer a sincere thank you to all the members of Badgerloop for everything you have done over the past year.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Tank and I am the Pod 5 Mechanical Director for Badgerloop. So after the last competition, the mechanical subsystems overall were in a very good spot. This and there not being a hard competition deadline led the mechanical team really to come up with 2 main missions for this year. One being the continual support and development of existing mechanical infrastructure to help implement the new electrical system, and the other being researching and developing more complex systems than we have in the past that we couldn't do due to the compressed timeline that we typically operate in. The mechanical systems on the pod really kind of highlight these 2 missions, with many of the pod 4 systems being adapted to fit on a new pod, as well as some of the newer systems being designed that were ready to go on the pod as well. Some of these key mechanical highlights include a new lateral stability system, the complete removal of the Pod 4 pressure vessel, new modules for both the Pod 5 battery and the rest of the electrical system, an easily removable fixture to mount the high voltage system to, so it can be developed off the pod as well as on the pod, and a new cooling loop and motor controller mounting. We also took the time to really kind of improve our Pod 4 data by developing better FEA models and testing, and also to tease some of the newer systems that are still under development is a new braking system with our own custom designed calipers to fit perfectly on the I-beam we run on, as well as a new propulsion system with a gear system to better optimize our pod's top speed over the track's distance. Finally, I would like to highlight the job the mechanical team leads and general members did. I know this year was difficult for everyone, me included. Not only was the organization conducted almost fully remotely, but so were many of our classes due to COVID. Despite these hurdles, in my view, the mechanical team made a ton of progress on the pod that is being shown today, as well as on the systems that are still under development behind the scenes. I really want to thank everyone for the time they dedicated to this project, and I continue working with everyone this next year.
Hi, I'm Shelby Riggleman, and I was the Pod 5 electrical director. With the absence of new competition rules, the electrical team's aim was to improve the modularity and robustness of the Pod 4's electrical architecture. Specifically, our design goal, lacking more specific parameters, was to create the most powerful vehicle we can in the same pod footprint with a better distribution of printed circuit board function, better power efficiency, and the ability to move 10 kilometers. There were many ways we accomplished these goals, many of which solutions required us to start from square one in the design process and go through overall architecture considerations, circuit design, analysis, schematic creation, layout, fabrication, and the testing of these respective systems. These key improvements included a new 2.4 kilowatt-hour high voltage battery pack, a new high voltage printed circuit board that performs pre-charge and facilitates complete isolation of the high voltage system. Additionally, a new main system controller was reduced to one printed circuit board from the previous pod. In addition to that, we distributed the braking system to remote I/O PCBs, communicating via serial communication. We have one-to-one connections, electrical connections on the entire system. We added telemetry on all power rails. We added power conservation circuits on the pump and solenoids. The solenoids namely conserve 85% of the power they previously use. We also performed tests to eliminate the pressure vessel. We also developed a hardware in the loop setup on a cart that consisted of all the electrical subsystems working together before ever being on the pod. And we also streamlined our code base to allow for easier expandability and further usage in future competitions. By implementing these new microcontrollers on our I/O PCBs, we were able to start modularizing our subsystems from a controls perspective as well. At the end of the semester, despite the hurdles we faced along the way, we were able to have an electrical system that was more efficient, robust, powerful, and sleeker than anything we had built before. As a cherry on top, we had been able to complete a complete sequence of autonomous propulsion to braking, which is not characteristic of where we typically are at the end of a school year.
Hi everyone. I first wanted to start by introducing myself. My name is Vito Gerlach. I'm our operations director, and I've been a member of Badgerloop for all 4 years of my college career. No, I'm not an engineer. I'm an accountant. But I would be amiss if I didn't take this opportunity to mention that without Badgerloop, I would not be where I am today. This time with Badgerloop has allowed me to work with the brightest minds of our age, pick their brains, and learn something new every single time I walk into our headquarters. These individuals are the ones that motivated me to work on this project each and every single day, and I applaud every member of this team for the hard work and dedication they have applied to Badgerloop this past year. Without these members, Badgerloop would not be the same, nor would it function. This past pod cycle, the operations team has played more of a support role than years past. Our outreach team garnered new members and acclimated these intrigued students to the current online structure we were using. Our industry relations team continued to manage sponsor relations, where our finance and supply chain team ensured all needed materials were purchased for the pod and the proper timing of these purchases was in place. Our virtual reality team continued to build on our history of Badgerloop Station where you can use a not a boring flamethrower and see the history of Badgerloop. Our website team continued to manage and build upon our wonderful website, beginning the implementation of an alumni page. Our feasibility team conducted research on the implementations of Hyperloop during the circumstances of a pandemic. And finally, our communications team created all the wonderful social media posts you see, but also created the wonderful reveal video you are about to watch, as well as other videos throughout the year, one particularly for the Engineering Expo. Again, it fills me with pride to see everything that these brilliant individuals have accomplished over the past few months. Badgerloop has a way of pulling the best out of you, and for that, I will forever be grateful.
In 2013, Elon Musk published a paper in which he proposed a new form of high-speed transportation called Hyperloop. After publishing the paper, his company SpaceX announced a competition for student teams from around the world to design and fabricate their own Hyperloop vehicles. Within days of the announcement, a group of UW-Madison students joined together to form what is now Badgerloop. These students were highly motivated by the innovative challenge of creating a new mode of transportation. Utilizing any resources they could gather, the team began planning for the first Hyperloop competition. Now, 6 years after the first competition, Badgerloop has shifted its focus from being primarily a competition team to one of the most diverse, well-respected STEM education student organizations at UW-Madison. Badgerloop continues to provide an unparalleled hands-on learning environment for students from all academic backgrounds and levels of experience. Furthermore, Badgerloop is the only team in the world that consists almost solely of undergraduate students. Fresh off their success at the fourth competition in fall of 2019, where the team once again asserted their status as one of the premier Hyperloop build teams in the world, Badgerloop set out to work on their fifth pod design for the next competition. Unfortunately, due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Badgerloop had to reevaluate and restructure their plans for the upcoming competition.
All team meeting March 1st. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll get it going. First things first, hopefully everyone that's here has taken a look at announcements and read the short novel that I posted on Sunday. The basic summary, I got another whole slide on this, so I'll just briefly touch on it. The shift is going to be constructing Pod 5, finishing it by the end of semester to a reveal ready state. That's 60 days away from today, just so everyone's aware.
So we kind of met up as an executive team and had a little bit of a realization that it had been a year and a half and we hadn't produced a physical pod, and we also seemed to be stuck in a rut. And I think that was the most important realization for me personally, is we were continuing to do the same thing, essentially spinning our wheels, and there was no visible or there was progress, but it wasn't concrete in the sense of what we had been used to. And so what Badgerloop has always been about, and it's in our mission and goals as well, is fabricating a pod and the learning experiences that come with that for our members. That's really what the whole org is about, is learning opportunities and developing us as students and people to be better engineers or business people or whatever your major might be. And so we met with the team leads and got everyone, we had a discussion amongst the team leads and executives, and a lot of people bought in. A lot of people thought it was a good idea to move forward with building a Hyperloop pod, despite how hard it might be given our limited time and the resources, as we're still affected by COVID in terms of our access to the workspace. And so it was a little interesting, but in terms of a decision and its feasibility or possibility. So our goal started off as being finishing the pod by the end of the semester, because that will, one, bring closure to all of the work that has gone into Pod 5, and that's most important for our members and their work and the time and effort they put in, and then secondly for our sponsors as well that had sponsored that Hyperloop pod. And so our goal is finishing the pod even if it is not an ideal design for that 10-kilometer track like we had started off the year being. But we believe that the value gained by our members and those working with the organization to fabricate a pod by the end of this year will outweigh the potential of waiting and putting that off as well into a future date.
Once we kind of made the decision to build a pod, there really wasn't that much time to waste, because 2 months is an incredibly short time for us to build something that we generally probably have about 6 months to build. So as an exec team, we first kind of scheduled, all right, what do we have to have done by these key deadlines to hit our end goal of having a pod done by the end of April? And we kind of foresaw like the biggest hang up would be this manufacturing process of getting in touch with machine shops, and then actually like obviously the lead time to have them be able to build it. So we kind of started from there, and then we figured out, okay, we have about 2 weeks to finalize designs, and about another 2 to obviously talk to the machine shops, and then by the end of March now, we really need to be sending stuff out to get machined.
We're nearing the end of our fabrication process here for Pod 4, and as such, we're doing some system integration testing. So we have sort of a off-the-pod but fully connected electrical system, which you can see behind me on the cart. And sort of the shining star is the propulsion motor here, which is the main component of our test that we're about to run. So we don't have our high voltage battery pack connected yet, but we have a high voltage power supply, and Eric over here is going to run some code which will hopefully hopefully spin this motor, and then also, which may be a little bit hard to visualize, actuate our solenoids, which, if they were connected to the braking pistons, would actuate the braking system. So I think we should be ready to go. I will step over here.
So yeah, I'm going to engage the second typer.
All right, controls is ready.
All right, go for it.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Never mind. Segmentation fall. It's going to take me a second.
Nice.
So right now what's happening is when we're trying to run the program that would fire the motor and then also the brakes, there's some bit of memory inside the processor on the board that's being mismatched. We're trying to access something that we shouldn't be allowed to, so there's some bug in the code there that is causing that, and I'm just trying to figure out what that is.
So for the time that we have, we're going to aim to get this on the pod, basically in the same electrical form that it exists in right now, but on the pod as it would be if we were going to run this in the tube. From there, it is more or less a matter of software developments to basically verify the sequence of states we run through, that basically everything from any input the pod gets, it will fail in a safe manner and act in our intended manner through basically anything that the pod could see. There are a couple hardware bugs that we are still working through that we will try to attend to in the future, but as a whole, the electrical system is functional. We just want to get it on the pod.
Good. All right. 3, 2, 1. No, I'm so happy that thing worked.
Very cool.
I did not think that would work.
Oh yeah, it worked.
Let's go.
Yeah.
See, it's one thing to work one time, but to work twice in a row. I was not expecting that.
Well, it didn't disengage the like contact at the time, but it's what it is.
Alright.
So sweet, yeah, that's awesome.
We had the discussion of, if hypothetically there isn't a competition, where does Badgerloop go? What do we do? And kind of given our circumstance, we've had a lot of time to think about those scenarios and situations. As unfortunate as it is, but it's also, I think, in terms, a great blessing that we've been able to do that as well, because we've been able to go through And as an executive team, we sat down and we thought, what is Badgerloop all about? Why do our members come to Badgerloop? Why are they so intrigued with what we were doing? Why do they stick around? And I think what we gained from a lot of that was people love working with each other. Like I had mentioned before, they love working with all these engineers, all these incredibly smart individuals. They love working with the operations team, and it really truly does feel like a startup. So that was kind of where we went towards, but then it came down to, well, how do we continue that feel? How do we continue to move forward and progress? And basically what we found out was that according to the team and according to the executives too, as we discussed this, the best path forward is to build a pod. And then it kind of came down to, well, what's our timetable? Because we have to consider that we've been designing a completely different Pod 5 compared to what we're going to be building. What do we do with a lot of those designs? Where does the performance design review kind of fall in within all of that? Where does our timeline fit in? And where can we give ourselves closure as a team for Pod 4 or for Pod 5, and then kind of progress forward into the next era, which is still going to be competition, and it's going to be very exciting. We're really, really excited for it when everything lifts and we can finally get back into building again and building more as a group as opposed to like specific individuals going in. But from what we found out was that based on the time frame, we still have time to build a pod. And we can build a really good pod. We can use our brand new electrical system that we've been designing from Pod 5. We can implement that within our Pod 4 system. We can go through and look at Pod 4 and we can determine what systems within it needed mechanically to be fixed. And we're able to go through and actually find areas that we can actually implement improvements on and actually go through and build it into. So it's been really fantastic because we've been able to shift really rapidly. And I think it's like any previous time of building a pod, whereas you always come down to the crunch time and you have to go through and you actually have to make sure that everything's in place. And it's very challenging to do that because you have to organize a lot of people. You have to make sure that you have all these parts manufactured, and you have to make sure that everything is in the right place at the right time. And obviously that's a very difficult situation to go through, but basically what we've gone through is we have a lot of planning in place within our purchasing teams to make sure that we can go through and have a lot of these items purchased in place and on time. And then we also have great sponsors that are coming in and helping us manufacture a lot of our parts, which is absolutely fantastic and has been a really, really great aid. And then we also have really hardworking and dedicated individuals. And I think like you can have all the monetary help that you need, you can have a lot of the material help, but what it really comes down to is the people that go in and actually implement these monetary or material items that are given to us. So in the end, I think kind of going off of your original question here is it's going to take a lot of hard planning, a lot of really diligent planning, a lot of really hard set deadlines that we've had. We currently already have a lot of very hard set deadlines, but I think coming up very soon, it's going to be very straight to the point, very quick. And we're going to have to be very agile. We're going to have great communication amongst the team. And in the end, like I had said before too, was we have to come together as a team. We all have to work together and we all have to do our part. And if we can do that, I genuinely believe that we can build a fantastic pod within the 60 days, which is something that, I mean, I don't think it's really been done by Badgerloop before, whereas we've shifted from our design phases and we've progressed onwards to this incredibly intricate build phase, and it's very exciting. So I think in the end, to get this done, we just really need to work together. We need to have a great deal of excitement, and we have to want to do this. And I think that we have all three of those. And I think it's gonna make a really great kind of just like a cauldron here that we can kind of go through and build this pod.
So right now we're just trying to put on the finishing touches for the pod. Just attached the black paint this week, drilled a couple holes on it for the final electrical components that will turn the high voltage system on and off. So once all that stuff gets inserted, the cover can go on and we can finally go forward with our reveal stuff. As far as like mechanical challenges, I guess there have been too many. I just flipped around the braking system because that was on backwards, but I don't know. If that's the hardest thing I run into, I'm pretty happy. Reveal is 5 days, so hopefully once we get this stuff wired up, we can take the pod out to the atrium, get some cool shots of it, and we're ready to go.
All right. We hope you enjoyed that reveal video. Now it is time for our live question and answer period. I am joined tonight by our president, Nathan Berg, Vito Gerlach, director of operations, Brian Tank, the mechanical director, and Shelby Riggleman, the electrical director. So again, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions for the exec team during this Q&A, to either submit them at the bottom of the reveal page, which is at badgerloop.org/reveal.html, or you can tweet at us using the hashtag BadgerloopPodReveal, which you can see just below me. So we're just going to dive into it, I guess. Thanks for joining me today, exec team. How are y'all doing tonight?
Doing great, Kevin.
Doing awesome, Kevin.
Awesome. So we'll just dive in with our first question then. Our first question, let me see, is what led to the decision to fabricate a pod in 60 days?
Yeah, I can take this one. So it was kind of a culmination of things. The biggest among them was kind of reevaluating where our organization was right at the beginning of second semester, and realizing and kind of taking a step back and looking at our high level, our mission and our goals really, and that's kind of the big driver here. And we kind of foresaw that if we continued down this path, that we wouldn't really be fulfilling our mission and goals by allowing us to fabricate a pod, which is super important for the hands-on experience and the learning gained throughout the entire design cycle of a vehicle. And so that, in essence, was the driver of the decision to then go forward with pod fabrication. And it definitely would have been nicer if we had had this conversation sooner than 60 days before the end of the semester, but that's how things went down, and we definitely did the best that we could in the time we had.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. We can just jump in with the second question then, which is, what was the biggest challenge for each of the main sub-teams? So if each of the three of you, Vito, Brian, and then Shelby, want to kind of take turns and talk about what the biggest challenges for your respective sub-teams were, that would be great. And we can start with Vito.
Yeah, I think kind of for operations-wise, operations, this competition had a very heavy support role to the rest of the organization. Therefore, we didn't have a lot of designs that we needed to go through and create. We didn't have a lot of fabrication that we needed to do. But I think the main difficulty of the operations team was, how do we best support the mechanical and electrical teams during a time where we can't necessarily all be in the same place at the same time. So kind of being able to organize members going around and manufacturing, being able to go around and manage how do we get film, kind of understanding how do we just kind of overall work as a team. A lot of our functions were able to transition very nicely into the kind of remote function, and because of that, we were able to really thrive as an operations team and as well as an organization. But I would definitely say kind of just mobilizing individuals so we can get a lot of the just footage overall that we need.
Brian?
So I think for the mechanical team, it was really just figuring out how to best collaborate. We're used to meeting in person, so we can all sit around in a computer lab, bounce ideas off each other, work in CAD together, that type of thing. But that was lacking this year due to pretty much all our lab spaces being closed and everything just being online. So I think just kind of like figuring out the balance between working online together, working off by yourself, and then coming together just to pitch ideas to each other, show what you have. Figuring out that balance was pretty hard.
And Shelby?
On the electrical side of things, one thing we always have a lot of difficulty with is integration. I won't talk about that, but one thing we ran into a lot of problems with this year was like board bring up and board fabrication. We hand fabricate and assemble all our own printed circuit boards, and when we're doing that, we tend to make errors sometimes, and sometimes those are really hard to track down and can kind of bite us, but we are able to learn about the systems better by investigating those errors, and end up got everything working in the end, which is pretty awesome.
Awesome, thanks. So our next question is, what was the inspiration in the development of the battery safety plan? So I think that's a question probably for Shelby.
Sorry, the battery safety what?
What was the inspiration in the development of the battery safety plan, the high voltage safety plan?
Sure. So our battery safety is, well, to start, our battery is certainly the most dangerous system on the pod, so we do not take lightly working with it. We base and have based all our rules off of formula SAE rules, adhering to pack voltage, what is a safe workable voltage, tool installation recommendations. So this year and in all years prior, we have a certain like qualification. Anyone who's working on the system, the battery system, needs to go through, slides they need to go through, safety wise. And one thing that we've really tried to do design wise, from a battery safety perspective, is we found works really well is modularity, to keep the individual modules of batteries quite low and within a safe working voltage. So modular design, qualification, and really being sure of the systems you're working with are all things that are really highly stressed.
Awesome, thanks. So our next question is, during the initial phase of development, how did you determine which mechanical subsystems needed to be updated? So I think that one's probably for Brian.
So it's not necessarily going through and figuring out like what can be left on the pod and what can be. It's more about the idea of continuous improvement. And kind of the mechanical systems have progressed to such a stage within Badgerloop that we're no longer just like able to overturn necessarily something that's better within a year. Like sometimes that design work takes a little bit more time. There's a little bit more analysis involved, a little bit more design work. So at the start of this semester, when I became mechanical director, it was more figuring out, okay, what can we build this year, and then like acknowledging what's going to necessarily probably take a little bit more time, and continuing to update the previous pod systems to where they would be usable with the new electrical system that the E team was designing, and then also figuring out, okay, what do we want to put on the next pod after this that we can really kind of like start looking ahead more than we have in the past.
Awesome. So another question, I don't have this one typed up, was why was a direct drive system chosen over something like a gear train?
So that question's kind of interesting because for like an electric motor, it's all about the RPM versus torque curve. So in your car, the reason you have like a gear system is because there's an optimal RPM where you generate the most torque. For an electric motor, that's pretty much constant at pretty much most RPMs. So there's not necessarily a benefit in having a gear system in that sense. What we have done in the past, before this previous direct drive system, we've had like we've had a belt drive system where basically we step up our how fast our wheel is compared to our motor, and that would allow us to generate more top speed. But with the shorter track that we're currently running on, that benefit just wasn't there for us. So in future pods, when we have that longer track, you'll see that come back. But for right now, it's off the pod, assuming the 1 kilometer.
Awesome. So our next question, I'll pose this one to Nathan, and then Nathan, if you want to kind of direct it to anybody else who might be able to answer parts of it, go ahead. So here's the question. What are the performance specs of Pod 5, both absolute and then also compared to Pod 4?
Gotcha. Yeah, why don't we, let's divvy this up into electrical and mechanical. So Shelby, do you want to kind of take a take a swing at the electrical specs? Just give a brief summary of those.
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, we made a new battery pack, which was 2.4 kilowatt hours. This was up from 1.6 kilowatt hours. We made this decision based on our necessary energy per kilometer. It was a necessary change to go 10 kilometers instead of the previous one. Along those same lines, with the new cells, we were able to discharge at a higher rate to give us a more of a higher discharge rate, which will allow for a 65 kilowatt discharge as opposed to what would have been about 40 earlier. On the low voltage system side of things, we made a lot of improvements to efficiency, as I mentioned. So with this pod's electrical system, we have a 9-hour idle time as opposed to what was previously 2 hours. And then one other big system level spec that helped us a lot and was a big improvement was 3 system level serial communication buses as opposed to what was previously 1. This helps reduce the harnessing complexity and really helped us modularize our pod.
Awesome, thanks. And then Brian, do you want to touch on a couple mechanical specs or how things compared to the previous pod?
Yeah, so mechanically, a lot of the pod is going to be performing at the same level. This year is definitely more of a stepping stone the upcoming years. Our top speed is still going to be around 180 miles per hour over a 1 kilometer track. And that's pretty much similar for a longer track until we implement more of that like timing belt I mentioned before. Braking 2.5 Gs, which is pretty similar to the previous pod. And then weight wise, we were actually quite a bit lighter. Well, we're roughly the same. So we put on the bigger battery pack, obviously, but we also took off our pressure vessel. And pretty much those two right there offset weight. So we're roughly just under 300 pounds.
Awesome. So I suppose that can... did anyone else have anything they wanted to add before we move on to the next one?
I'll just say one more thing about the top speed being the same, but with the larger battery pack that enables a much longer runtime at a higher rate of speed. So you could traverse a much longer track in a much shorter amount of time by cruising at top speed there.
Awesome. All right, so our next question is, how would you describe the interaction between the electrical, mechanical, and operations teams?
I can take this one. So it's interesting having the 3 sub teams. We always like to say that we kind of model ourselves after like a startup company or a small company. In that sense, the interactions we do like to keep them like frequent in terms of how often they happen. So we'll have obviously our meetings with the whole team, and then each team themselves will have their own meeting to go in deeper into more technical aspects of things more associated with their specific teams. And really the interaction is quite well, I think, or happens quite well between the teams, especially mechanically, electrically, and then operations does a great job with coming in with both of those teams and supporting both of those teams in tandem. And yeah, I think we do a good job with interaction to progress forward with our designs and kind of keep the wheels turning on the Badgerloop organization.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything to add?
I can add more from kind of just an operations perspective here a little bit. In terms of a lot of how the support goes, more specifically, kind of ties within a lot of our outreach and recruiting team, our finance and supply chain team, as well as our industry relations team, where we work very heavily with the mechanical and electrical teams to reach out to sponsors and garner needed materials or monetary donations Our finance team kind of goes in and makes a lot of purchases for the needed materials as well, and is in constant communication with the team leads of the mechanical and electrical teams to kind of ensure that a lot of these processes kind of go in place really well, that parts are coming in when they need to be coming in, that manufacturing lead times are kind of understood, and supply chain issues are solved basically. So it's really great that we're able to kind of all work together in those aspects to kind of streamline the way that we build this pod overall.
Awesome. So I think we have time for probably 3 more questions before we're going to need to wrap it up for the night. So the next one is, what did you enjoy most about building Pod 5? So we can start with Nathan and then go to Vito, then Brian, then Shelby on that one.
So what I enjoyed most about Pod 5 was seeing how the team all came together with all the adversity we were facing in terms of like timeline, material procurement, and being able to access our space in terms of how many people we can have due to the pandemic. And it was really great to see all that, and then also obviously myself to be a part of that and keep working to construct the pod. So it was really just the feeling of the team really cohering and being a team.
I'm gonna kind of bounce right off you there, Nathan. My favorite part about building this pod was working with each and every single individual on this team. They're all incredibly smart, and every single time I interact with anybody on this team, I learn something new. So therefore, my favorite part about building this pod would be the interactions and just how much I learned from everybody around me.
For me, I think it was just perfect timing with kind of like everything else that was going on in the rest of the world. When we really started getting into HQ and building the pod, you were starting to see vaccinations getting rolled out, and it just being a lot more acceptable to be working around people. And I know, like, I'm sure most of us, both watching this and in the call, were getting pretty used to just like sitting in our rooms, doing our schoolwork. So just having that outlet where we could be outside of our house, interacting with other people in the workshop, it was pretty great, safely, of course.
Yeah, I'll echo all of those comments. Working with the team, especially with the last year, has been awesome. But the thing I really enjoyed most was basically seeing the progression of a design from drawing it on a whiteboard in a classroom to living like a thing that worked and you put together with other people and work together on. It's really an awesome thing, and something like Badgerloop can provide.
Awesome. So our second to last question is, what would you say to anyone interested in joining Badgerloop? I'll throw this one primarily to Nathan and Vito, and then if Brian and Shelby want to kind of add on at the end, go ahead.
Yeah, I could just give a brief thing. Definitely reach out, and the way you do that is the easiest way is just go to our website, and there's a form there that you can fill out. We would very much love to have anyone that's interested to reach out, and we'd love to have you on the team. There's no like requirements for skill level or anything, and yeah, it's such a great team of people and a great way to learn things. I've benefited so much from having 4 years at college where I was in Badgerloop, and I've learned so many lessons, and it's just been a great experience. So definitely reach out, even if you're kind of hesitant. Just throw out a message.
Awesome. And then I was just gonna add, Vito, while you're answering this question, if you kind of want to talk more about operations focused side of things and people who might not be engineering majors, that would be awesome.
Yeah, of course. And I can even kind of tiptoe or share how I joined Badgerloop. Whereas I originally came to the booth at the student org fair with a friend because I knew somebody on the team, and somebody asked me, "Well, what are you interested in on the team?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not an engineer." To which they replied with, "Well, actually, we have an entire operations team," which was just the greatest news I could possibly hear because it's marketing, it's finance, it's industry relations or industry communications. It's feasibility study, virtual reality, website development. Just every single item that you could possibly think of within a business is there. Human resources as well. So to anybody considering joining Badgerloop, I would say be interested in learning, be interested in kind of pushing yourself a bit, because none of this comes easy. It's very, very hard work, but in the end, a lot of us do find it very rewarding and very intriguing, and just to work and learn everything that comes along with Badgerloop is just absolutely fantastic. Therefore, I would say, in terms of, don't be afraid to join any team within the organization. We've had individuals come to operations that switched over to mechanical or electrical. Um, every single area of the business is great to learn, and therefore joining Badgerloop and just keeping an open mind is absolutely key.
Awesome. So we have time for one more quick question. This is a fun one. So we can go around the circle again if we want to go Nathan, then Vito, then Brian, and then Shelby. What are your favorite Badgerloop memories?
That's actually quite a stumper, because I have very many favorite Badgerloop memories. But to share one of them, the most fun, it's hard. I'll just pick one. During the competition for Pod 4, we were working super late at night and working on all sorts of things, and it always gets late, and it's quite a scene seeing a group of young engineers and students at UW-Madison working on something so feverishly that they're so dedicated to try and get everything prepared to compete in the competition. It's just it's kind of a wild thing, but it's a great experience and definitely wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, I'm going to be piggybacking off of Nathan yet again. But one of my favorite memories has to be competition. This past Pod 4 competition when we were in Hawthorne for testing week, just working around all of these engineers and seeing the engineering process at work, and just how, in essence, a business functions through their main competition phase, or basically the main output finally. Being able to do that, being able to have that experience, being able to share that with so many incredible individuals and build so many friendships, that's been my favorite part about Badgerloop.
Yeah, I really want to echo what Vito and Nathan said, but also to switch it up a little bit. I don't know if this is my favorite memory, but start of last year, Badgerloop had the opportunity to go to the Kong Ad Expo. And right when that was happening, I think Nathan and I, Kevin, and someone else were all boarding the plane. And I look at my phone, and it's a tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski saying the NBA is shutting down because of COVID. And then we sat down and we fly to Vegas. That's just something I'll never forget.
Yeah, along the same lines of what Vito and Nathan were talking about, the competition definitely makes for some good memories. One I had was namely sleeping on the ground in a parking lot to wake up with the sunrise and charge the batteries. It was a pretty surreal experience, but right next to the big rocket and everything. It was pretty crazy.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for that Q&A. I just want to remind everyone that if you want to learn more about each of the individual subsystems on the pod, you can scroll down a little bit on badgerloop.org/reveal.html below where the video is embedded. And you'll see breakdowns of each one of the individual pod systems. And then a little further down below that, you'll see some experiment videos that we threw together earlier in the spring for an event called Engineering Expo that we usually participate in. And then further below that, you'll be able to see each of our incredible exec members and team leads who worked on this most recent Pod 5. So with that, I just would like to thank everybody for joining us today. That's about it for the Pod 5 reveal. Thanks to all of the Badgerloopers who made tonight possible, and thank you, our friends, families, and sponsors, for your continued support. We could not do this without you. So please be sure to follow us on social media for updates on the future of Badgerloop throughout the summer and into the fall. We will be updating the reveal page with a slightly edited version of this live stream soon. And then tune into our YouTube on Saturday at noon to rewatch the Loop is Life documentary short that we used today to reveal the pod. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and have an awesome night.